Welcome to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.
Hello and welcome to Landwards, the podcast of the Institution of Agricultural Engineers. I'm your host, Andy Newbold, and I am very kindly joined today by Jonathan Gill, who is a farm innovation specialist for the UK Agri-Tech Centre. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello. No, thank you ever so much for inviting me onto a podcast. What a great way to talk about what I do.
Well, and I apologise to give the backstory for listeners who possibly are not aware of the mechanics of how we bolt this together. I send a really vanilla, boring set of questions to Jonathan, and to anyone who comes on, in fact. And then what gets exciting is what the answers to the questions are. So I apologise in advance if I do a sort of syllablack of what's your name and where'd you come from. But we will see where this goes. We've known each other, and I'm going to lick my finger and stick it in there, probably for a decade or so, and possibly with Hands-Free Farm at its outset, I'm guessing, when you were at Harper Adams, something like
That's
that.
right. In all honesty, it was this time 10 years ago that Kit and I started bouncing around the words hands-free hectare on a post-it, just to actually allow ourselves creative license to do something exciting and different.
I imagine he claims the credit and probably has the post-it note in a little frame in his bedroom as well.
We lost it. Unfortunately, it's our biggest loss.
Here, I've got one on my desk here, so if I just fill it in, then maybe I'll post it note. If anyone asks, I look forward to the lawsuit in due course. Just write another one. No one will know. No one will know. Right. Okay. So let's start at the beginning, as they say. You're an agricultural engineer. You maybe don't describe yourself as that. We'll possibly get to that in our discussion. But tell us a little bit about your background, where you started from, what got you going.
So my background is that I was one of those children who always liked to take things apart, find how things work, and literally understand how the world works. I think the best question I ever asked my father was, how far will a bee fly on a drop of water? And that particular question for him drove him crackers, but it was an interesting thing for him to know that I was always thinking about the crazy stuff. But my dad was a great guy. He helped me learn how to make radio controlled planes, put all things together. We made gliders, many different planes to never fly, but also inspired me to kind of create radio controlled cars, drive those around, and actually then fix things and actually then get them running. I think one of the bits that I realized I was a little bit different was when I was at primary school. I hadn't necessarily got the money. I had a kind of a humble upbringing, which meant that I did have to fix everything that I broke instead of buy new things. But I wanted a new radio control car. So I took the radio control out of a broken thing, put them into another thing, and made my new radio control car. And I must have been about 9, 10, soldered this up in my bedroom with my parents not knowing, and then came out the next day and took this new radio control car to school. I was super proud of myself, and my dad didn't even know what was going on.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I think you're just ahead of the curve with this sort of mend it, reuse, recycle philosophy, which we're trying to hammer into society nowadays. So that's a really healthy starting point. And what about the farming side of things, or the drift towards ag engineering? What was there a bit of a light bulb with that, or just did you grow up around it? How did that happen?
So I've got to give credit to my cousin Alan. So at primary school, we went together day in, day out. We would be driving to school and we would guess the name and model of the tractor when we were driving to and from. And he was obsessed, absolutely obsessed with farm machinery. And we would then get home from school and play Britain's tractors around the floor. He would instill in the importance of crop rotations and different machinery sizes, number of plow harrows and other bits that would actually go on the size of tractor and all these other parts. And that was amazing for me because it just became natural. I didn't think anything different of where the food came from, and farming was important to us. we then went to different schools, and farming never really entered my mind until after I'd actually done my degree and worked offshore. But my parents always lived in the countryside, so I was always watching the changing of the seasons. I would always go out and watch the harvest happen right next to our house, and it was always a nice time to actually understand what was going on around in the world relating to what was growing around you.
So if you'll pardon the agricultural pun, the seed was planted deep. Let's put it that way.
Very true. Very
But
true.
he's here all week. All right, so let's fast forward out of school. What did you study?
So I was a late bloomer, and I can seriously say that because I spent 3 years at college and didn't really get many AS levels, or A levels as they were back then, to actually put to my name. And I
This
probably
did this
studied the wrong
coincide
thing.
with you discovering English bitter and girls?
Not really that at all. Genuinely, my dyslexia was not really picked up at the challenge that it was required until I went to university.
Yeah.
So,
So you'd fought your battle alone up until that point.
yeah, no, I actually was told by a good number of my teachers at the time that I was a bit thick, and I just
Brilliant. I bet that really encouraged you, made you feel very special.
yeah, I did once meet one of my biology teachers again and actually gave him flipping what for after I'd
Mm.
actually got my degree in robotics, which was great.
Yeah.
They used the old adage of all I was trying to do was inspire you to push out a little bit harder, and actually
Yeah, it's like, no, you made me feel rubbish because you should never speak to anybody like that.
no, but yeah, genuinely, I was a late bloomer to actually then go through everything else. And at the time, UCAS made you apply to go through a university, and I just wanted to get as far away from the countryside and everything else that I could because I just lived there all my life. I hadn't actually been anywhere else exciting, and I'd just done a RYA Yachtmaster course that allowed me to actually then go sailing. So I was like, Plymouth University would be great, right by the sea, completely different. It'll allow me to actually then get a little bit further.
Mm.
The only adage was I had to do a foundation year beforehand that got me through all the engineering requirements, which was the marine sports technology degree that I was applying for. And that was when the light bulb went off. I was like, wow, okay, this actually makes sense. So the physics, engineering, maths, and the other business
The
studies that I went
connections, the
for,
connections.
literally it was like, oh, okay, this all makes sense now. And it was probably down to, well, my reading age obviously was well, this is to put it exactly right. I was reading the Harry Potter book when I went to university. So I was able to just about start reading normal books when I went to university. And that
Hmm.
meant that I was able to start reading technical journals and understanding engineering speak when, well, all the required reading that you'd actually then need to do. And then it just started coming together a little bit more because there was a need and necessity to actually do the mathematics because it allowed you to work out the strut distance, the strength, the triangulation.
Yeah, so that enabling really was a function of knowing you had to do it as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Because as
exactly.
soon as you've seen the purpose, I struggled with maths all the way through A levels, all the way through O levels, and I had to resit my maths in my first degree year of my degree at Harper. I always struggled with maths, but the application of the maths was never a problem.
Yeah. And as soon as I understood what it was needed for in comparison to actually then just working out how many toothpicks were in a pot, it was great. Like literally, this is really important. And I remember Phil, my physics teacher, coming in and telling us like he'd come a bit too fast to university on his scooter because he was running late. Went over a sleeping policeman and was able to get air. So then he had actually then estimated the weight of him and the bike and the slope and angle, and we actually then just did the calculation of how far he actually flew. And that was just brilliant because it just added some humor and understanding
Mhm.
into real world mathematics and what it actually then could do for you to actually allow you to work something out.
Would you like me to just share with you now my physics teacher, Mr. Samuel's explanation of what a Newton meant?
Oh, please
He
do.
told us you had to go to Jack Gardner's garage at the end of the road from the school in Kennel and get a quarter of a pound of toffees and spread them out over a metre. And ever since that point, I could get, and I was 12 at the time, but that analogy thing, that meaning these aren't just abstract numbers. This isn't just some random thing. It allows you to work this out, which means something. Which in the I just love that analogy of the getting big air with the scooter and how far he travelled. I think that's a great idea.
It was real world stuff, and he was a wonderful person. So that allowed me to then just go, okay, I'm not as bad as all of this that I was expected from college. I thought I was going to actually then just really, really struggle. I still struggled. I had amazing help from the dyslexia team at Plymouth University. I couldn't have done what I did without their additional help. But it certainly made a massive difference because I had a reader and writer throughout all my degree.
Mm.
I had a writer through all my exams and other things, which still makes my partner chuckle because my writing capabilities are pretty poor, but I obviously understand everything very well.
And the writing is purely the mechanism, literally, of getting it on the page.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
the thinking's the thing, isn't it?
Well, I chuckle because you'd asked me to write down the things of the questions so far, and I thought I'd done a good job, and then I reread it, and then I got the computer to read it to me, and it struggled with a good number of sentences and words that was actually put out in there. But nonetheless, as I said,
Detail,
it literally
detail.
came through of I had this wonderful foundation year at Plymouth University, and I met some great people and realized I was better than what I was setting myself up for. And I then begged to actually then be allowed to go on to a course that my friend Barry was doing, which was robotics and automated systems, because I always wanted to do robotics, even from when I was a kid. I loved playing with machines and other parts, but I was always told that I wasn't necessarily smart enough to actually then go and deal with that from my education capabilities. My parents were incredibly helpful and very, very loving and everything else to actually then encourage my capabilities to build things. But it was all down to educational capabilities and other bits to actually then push on forwards, which kind of was always at the back of my mind that allowed me to
Mm.
struggle. But I think that comes across is that when I actually then received my degree certification, I was stuck on the stage for an extra 20 more seconds while they read out all the accolades and awards that I had actually won throughout the entire period of time, actually getting there. So it was quite nice to actually show that I definitely
And
come to
get some
my own at this
recognition.
point.
Get some recognition for your struggle, for your fight, for your ways to get there. So you went to Plymouth to do, and I've got to paraphrase because I've completely forgotten now, something to do with the technology around marine sports
That's
ish.
it, marine sports technology. I
Oh,
was going to,
most of the words are not quite in the right order. I'll go with
yeah,
that.
I was going to go and make boats, and the good thing was it was going to allow me to sail them around the world with a
Mm.
full-on ocean masters to actually allow me to continue doing that. But the degree did change, and it was only a theoretical instead of practical at the year that I was going to actually then start. And I was like, that's no good. I want to do some practical stuff. So that's why robotics just gave me that ping of excitement.
And also that foundation gave you the awakening to tell you a bit more about yourself and think, actually, A, I'm better than I think I am, and B, I have a passion in this direction, and recognize your passion. So it
Definitely.
certainly wasn't a wasted year because it enabled you to change direction or to refine your focus.
Yeah, 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 bang on. It was it just pushed into it. I had the amount of work that I had to actually do in that foundation was unbelievable for the reports and the maths reports and everything else that I had to do on a weekly basis to actually then just show it. But the other aspect was because I'd been at school um and had to have a job previously, and my parents weren't flush with money. I realized that this was my only chance. I wasn't doing this for a flipping whim. I didn't want to go back to my previous job, working at an outdoor shop, because that would be my life. I
Mm.
wanted to do something bigger and better. And I couldn't blame it on anyone else. I was literally living there in my house.
Yeah.
I
Well, you've
had
got
to
to
do
take the
it.
credit and the blame, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's where it all came together. So I have never looked back from that capability of actually then making robots and things and actually enjoying enjoying something slightly quirky with my personality to do something slightly different.
Yeah. Well, you've got to find your own way, and you certainly have and are doing that. So, following graduation with your robotics and automated systems degree and the selection of accolades around that, what was your route, or explain your next steps towards agriculture, for want of a better word, or what next?
So I went and had a job at the aquarium in Plymouth for a while. It worked with technology in the oceans, and that was really exciting. And it showed me something that I'd never experienced before, was a remotely operated vehicle, which was an underwater robot. That led me to think about areas that I could make more money than working in an aquarium, and that led me to go and work in the petrochemical industry. So I went and worked at the biggest ROV company in the world at the time, based in Aberdeen in America, which was Oceaneering International. And that sent me around the world, Northern Hemisphere, um, on different rigs, boats, and locations, just doing some really exciting things with these underwater robotic vehicles that would be under the sea, well over 750 meters. So the capability of working with these fantastic machines with manipulator arms look just like Thunderbird 4, if any of the listeners actually can picture that in their mind, but it's just the same as like Alvin that you'd have seen on the Blue Planet with David Attenborough inside. This was all completely telepresence where I was sat in a container on the top of a rig and there was a big long umbilical all going all the way down to the bottom, allowing me to then control and visualize what was going on down underneath the water, but all robotic, all challenging, all things that should break and need fixing all the time to actually then maintain their capabilities of actually then working. And starting from just being the very junior start of being a pilot, I was then worked up to pilot technician and then supervisor, which was wonderful over the 6.5 years I worked offshore.
And then, okay, so that's work at that point. What else were you doing? Were you doing anything else with your hobbies at this point?
Yeah, no, so that's kind of where it kind of then go into, well, I did want to change my career because I'd done some exciting stuff. The money was keeping me there, but I was making radio control planes again because I'd got time off. I was month on, month off, and I was starting to make radio control planes with the knowledge of robotics back into it again. So I was adding what was originally Arduino based boards, which had got gyros, barometers, compasses built into them, and allowing these radio control planes that I'd made when I was 6 to then go and fly themselves. They would literally take off, fly a loop around the fields, the harvest lands that we were literally going into, and add cameras onto them and understand more about the technology to allow me to take photographs from the air, which was a wonderful experience. And because I am a flawed human, I haven't got the capabilities of making things work perfectly every time, and I certainly can't fly. The capability of making a machine do something better than I am adds a massive amount of reward to me as a daily experience. So going to make a vehicle go and fly and actually then do that when it's all been made out of hobby parts that you're buying from eBay and from Chinese kind of model shops and everything else to actually then go and fly, wonderful experience, especially when you actually see the fruits of your labor of a photograph that came from an old mobile phone taped onto the base of it.
There's also that great strength, which is knowing your own weaknesses. When you
Yeah,
know your own flaws, know your own weaknesses, you're much stronger than believing that you're impregnable. And that plays out in the this doesn't work, that didn't work, what can I do better? It's a fundamental part of being an engineer, as far as I'm concerned.
definitely. And I think it was all starting to come together with actually understanding the rigors of working offshore, where you had a machine that was having to then work, and it had to work when it took an hour and a half to send it down to the bottom of the ocean. And then when you were then trying to make a machine that would fly up in the air and had to take a photograph of an exact location to make it do the thing that you expected it to happen, and then program its capability to get there and then get back down again, always incredibly complicated stuff to actually then get going. It took me weeks and weeks of work to try and get this working. And I was working with a hackers forum to allow us to create these exciting things. And I still remember one of the bad days when I'd made my octa-rotor drone. I'd taken my mum's camera, hacked that with the Canon hack code to then allow me to control the zoom in and out from a remote control. And then it took off. Now, unfortunately, there was a dodgy connection in it that allowed it to not then return to home. And if you imagine letting go of a string of a balloon and watching it sail off into the distance, that's exactly what my drone did.
With your mum's camera attached to it.
With my mum's camera attached to the base of it, and it went and drifted off into the distance. And this is my one and only flyaway, but it went from Shropshire into Herefordshire, 6 miles away, and landed in some willow trees. Now, thank God I live in a rural area, so it didn't actually go over any house.
Did you manage to find it?
Yeah, I did. I managed to find it.
You followed it.
Well, we worked out the transact. My dad's a surveyor, so we worked out the transact of where it was actually going off into the distance. We followed the line, and it took me a couple of days because I only walked 2 kilometers away from where I thought it was. Didn't realize it was 6 miles away in another county before it was able to actually then be picked up again. So yeah, it was a local farmer who had seen some notifications and also going on the Radio Shropshire thing to actually ask where my drone was. Somebody was able to phone in and actually let me know.
Oh, thank goodness.
But this was back in 2011.
I bet it was a bit icy at the dinner table when your mum said, how have you got on today, Jonathan? You went, oh, well, a couple of things happened, mum, but nothing to worry about. Well, you quietly confessed to your dad and said, I'm in trouble here.
Yeah, but this was an interesting thing because it was all before drones were a thing. Nobody really knew about them. Certainly people didn't have them in their home like the Phantoms, and as of now literally have a box where they can actually go and take a droney themselves. This was very much in the infancy of the technology of being the first ones to actually fly within Shropshire.
So you're working offshore. You've got a lot of spare time because you're 1 month on, 1 month off. So I'll use the loose term playing with setting up these things, building your own drones and so on and so forth. What next? You've also clearly stimulated your itch to think I need to get back a little bit closer to agriculture to align some of the things you're doing.
I saw in the paper the National Centre for Precision Farming had actually opened up recently at Harper Adams, and I put my drone in the car and went and had a meeting with Simon Blackmore. And it was from then on, it was really interesting about him allowing me to work in the environment of the university for a year to equivalently put myself through a self-funded learning experience. A master's didn't exist for drone operation and remote sensing at the time. So I just basically just did all the learning that I could through that entire thing. So I don't have a master's for it, but I certainly did all the education and learning.
Yeah, you put the time in while you were in that role at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And I just did self-funded myself for a year to actually then go through, which because I was there day in, day out, the university was like, this is quite a useful chap who knows how to actually then do some things here. Should we actually find him a position? And that's exactly what happened.
So your learning from that point is you were prepared to put some shoe leather in because it was an atmosphere, it was an environment you wanted to put yourself in, and it was an area you're interested in. And the payoff of that was that Harper got to recognise he knew some things that they wanted, and they found a home for you. That's really good.
Very much so. No, Harper was a wonderful new environment and experience to actually then go and have. I'd experienced the wide world of working offshore, which was a tough, hard, challenging in lifestyle to actually then go and be.
Yes, it is.
And the people that you meet didn't necessarily have the same conversational level that you'd want to talk to on a day in, day out.
And also, with respect, you're the technical specialist for the remote operating vehicle. Other people working in offshore are doing different technical roles to greater or lesser extent. So irrespective of the money, irrespective of the technical challenge and so on and so forth, as you say, you are thrust together with other people and it's all right for a season or to pay the deposit on your house or whatever you want to do. But equally, it's a very special person who chooses that as a career for the rest of their lives, in my experience.
Exactly. And what the epiphany was for me was every day was a school day when I worked at Harper because I kept this methodology that I needed to learn one thing every single day.
Yeah.
So I'd go and speak to every single lecturer who interested me about things at lunch hours, in meetings, and other bits that actually were related to my research on drones, telepresence, anything else, helping out with taking photographs just for free and actually just doing it for fun, while also getting involved with interesting things at the university, which forevermore I try and actually learn something every single day to actually keep on going. At which Kit will chuckle because he was at the brunt of it when we would sit together in the office and I would like pull out the John Nick's book and we were like, well, how much yield are we expecting to get from wheat this year? And he would like, okay, well, this is the challenges that we've actually then got.
Mm.
Like, okay, well, how am I going to know it's an area that is good or bad from looking at my drone images and other things? And it just started off a great conversation across everything else. And we were doing some amazing projects at the same time with like laser weed and some big bale stackers. And it just seemed to all come together as a really enjoyable part of my life.
Brilliant. Absolutely excellent. And I may just put that methodology on the wall to remind me that I need to learn one new thing every day, and either put it in my journal, or annoy my kids by telling them over the dinner table. But and presumably you're trying to keep rolling with the learning one new thing every day then.
Very much so, yeah.
So if I put you on the spot, is it too early on Thursday, the 14th of August, or whenever we're recording this, for you to say that? Tell me
No,
what's
yeah.
today's
So
learning.
today, I would say that I was speaking with a lady called Paula from Vinescapes, and it was about how they were running and operating vineyards.
Perfect. That's today's new learning. Brilliant. So with Harper Adams, where did Harper lead you?
Oh, so many different places. I was impressive enough to actually then run the project known as the Hands-Free Hectare, but I won't go into too much project because people know what the
Mm.
Hands-Free Hectare is about from the legacy of things. But it allowed us to then go and work on exciting projects with Tafe over into India. Because I was seemed knowledgeable to actually then talk about running and operating a farm, I got asked to go and keynote in events over in Chile, in Canada, many places around the UK, and it really opened my eyes to the understanding of what technology and agriculture really has to actually then play. Um, Harper feels to me more of my university than Plymouth was. I've spent more years there and actually then done more learning in that environment. But it's a really interesting experience to actually then kind of get me to understand something that is instilled into my knowledge of like we all need to eat. We all need to have food on our plates, and farming is probably one of the most important things that we need to actually then have and pay attention to. And that is something that I'm very passionate about as well. And I want to make sure that many people know that farming is such an important thing
Mm.
to allow us to keep on living the lifestyle that we have.
Yeah, it's not some concept. Um, can we fast forward now to tell us what your job is now? Tell us what you're doing, John, day to day.
Yeah, so at the moment I work for the UK Agri-Tech Centres. I spend all that time at Harper Adams and managed to move away to North Wales, and then I get moved to the building that I actually worked at as the Hands-Free Farm again, which is absolutely
That's
hilarious.
presumably that's not a great hardship, other than travelling from North Wales to Harper Adams, which I dare say you don't
No,
want to
not
do
at all.
every
No,
day.
it does actually show that there is a amazing hub of knowledge and capabilities actually held in central England, and actually working within the Midlands hub allows us to actually then go and do that, which is great. My job role is a farm innovation specialist, so I am more farm facing, talking directly to our trials farms and farmers, and developing projects relating to technology which is at developed levels to allow you to actually then do useful things in the environment. So the whole important thing is it's not these kind of university style incubator projects that are actually coming out. This is stuff that is really going to make a difference to the farmers at the other end. So I'm working on some interesting ones. One's Project Vista, which is all based around vineyards and the knowledge database that is for locations of where those vines are, all the way to Project Messium, which is hyperspectral analysis of wheat from satellite. So some really interesting aspects of that, but also going to the locations, speaking to the farms and farmers, taking ground truth measurements by physically taking samples and actually understanding the full process from one end to the other, of actually then helping develop the technology and actually then utilize it for real world benefits.
And also, this will resonate massively with your natural curiosity about following a process through, presumably.
Oh, I love it. I literally absolutely love being able to actually then go through and actually then see harvest. Well, this is my first year of harvest with the set company, but I started at the perfect time to actually then just see a project run through to the point of harvest, which is amazing to actually then see. We've got grapes coming soon. But it allows us to actually then make real world decisions and actually then prove the capabilities of what was theory into practice. And I think the important part is it's not theory anymore, and it's the physical practice that actually adds the value to the farming community here in the UK of something that we're really meant to actually be standing and showing up is required to allow ourselves to actually make a bottom end meet and actually make it a sustainable business and allow us to keep on eating.
Yeah, as you say, let's not forget the business we're in, which is actually the business of food and enabling that and all the things around that, as you say, sustainability, environmentally, and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, it's what's on the plate. I'm just getting a bit conscious of time here. What role does volunteering play in your life?
So it's an odd stage at my point. I've just started a new job, so I'm quite busy with actually just making sure everything works there
Yeah.
nicely. But I am a Nuffield farming scholar and I receive emails.
Once a scholar, always a scholar. I understand. It's like the mafia, isn't it? Once you're in.
Yeah, very much. So that also means that I receive emails that come through to LinkedIn, to my personal email. I reply to them, hopefully enable myself to actually meeting up. Hopefully there's going to be one meeting up with me next week, and we go from there to actually then enable that to happen. And it's quite nice to actually then be called upon as having a particular font of knowledge in a set area to actually then go and discuss. I'm also, as I said, recently joined the iAgri, which is a great environment to actually then be. And I'm going through the process of being mentored by Ray King at the moment, which is a really nice thing to actually experience because I realized at the point that I wanted to actually keep on furthering myself. And as we discussed earlier on, I went through the entire process of doing a self-taught master's, but I have no engagement or accreditation actually then from that other than my Nuffield scholarship. So I wanted to actually get chartered, which is a really important thing to actually then
Yeah.
showcase to myself that I'll keep on learning and others that have actually got some knowledge in that particular environment, which is great to actually then keep on working. And I think the other aspect is that when it comes down to that, it's not just engineering, the volunteering, is that I also help my partner and her paddleboard business. So there's SUP Club and there's SUP Expeditions that I actually go and help her and actually run there, which is really nice because it then brings together the other aspects of digital life, which is us working with technology all the time, all the way down to literally disconnecting from absolutely everything and actually being in that nice environment. However, as you
Yeah.
can imagine, there's always a drone somewhere.
Mm. I'll put that down as the title. It's quite interesting. One thing you touched on there is about your sort of self-taught masters without the piece of paper at the end. Do you see yourself as a a self-taught learner. In other words, you have to get the resources around you and you have to accumulate the knowledge rather than someone who sits there and takes it from YouTube or a PowerPoint or a lecture.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's how I've learned throughout.
You're a grazer and accumulator. Grazer's it's probably the wrong term. I apologise, but you say I need to know about this, and you thunder off to get it, and you talk to people rather than and other than creating your own learning environment, which is whether it's at your desk or whether it's sitting in a deck chair with the stuff in front of you or whatever. It's not necessarily opting yourself onto a course of delivered content.
I'd say the other aspect is that I don't want to learn about it unless it's got a use. So I really want to learn if I've got a
Yeah.
need, I'll go into it full force to actually then find the need. And I think this is probably one of the biggest lessons that I've actually ever learned from my career is that I'm only where I am because I don't give up. Now, there's so many people that I'd have worked with to going on the project. The Hands-Free Hectare is the perfect example. I could
Yeah.
have given up so many times because it was flipping hard. And the quote that Kit and I would always joke about it is like, we don't do this because it's easy. We do this because it's hard, and we do it because it's not been done before. Like there were days that I just didn't know how to actually then solve a problem, and I'd literally be awake into the middle of the night, actually close to flipping tears that I didn't know how to actually then solve that because the pressure was crippling. But because,
But that's your pressure, isn't it?
oh yeah, completely my own pressure, my everything
Recognizing that
else
it's
to
your
actually then,
pressure and you're racing yourself in your head. And
yeah,
that's not a criticism at all, but we all have to have motivation and stimuli, don't we?
yeah, no, damn on, and that's exactly right. So it was all self-imposed pressure to actually then go and do this. Nothing that's actually going to
Yeah.
allow me to be out of a house and a home and everything else like that. But it was all down to imposing that, but just making sure that I didn't give up and actually just kept on pushing forwards when it was so easy to give up is probably one reason why I'm where I am today is because I just keep on trying.
Yeah. And again, that's a great lesson for anyone who's listening to this podcast who sat there hitting their head against a brick wall going, why am I trying this? Why am I doing this? Keeping going, resilience is a great skill. It's a great thing to develop in your professional journey, in your personal journey, is that bloody mindedness to go, no, I know that this is something I need to do. And it's an admirable thing, irrespective of how it doesn't feel like it at the time. And you sigh and go, right, I'm going to have to do this. But nothing good comes easy. So, I would encourage you in that. We've got a few minutes to wrap up now. Looking at ag engineering in the broadest possible sense, which, you'll be able to relate to here. Where do you see the discipline going? Where do you see the science, the state of the art? Where do you see, what do you think of the big things which are going to become the issues or are the issues in ag engineering?
Um, I think there's been some really interesting development of technologies that have been learned from generations of farms and farmers that have just been passed along without, in a sense, formal education. The the capabilities of these newer, bigger companies that come together to actually then provide machinery and the engineering technology that is a physical thing that allows us to actually then go farming is becoming more of a inbuilt process to actually then make happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sometimes worried that we're not necessarily remembering the old lessons that were learnt of years gone by and actually then paying attention to some of those. So like literally doing seeding into crop before it's actually then harvested to actually
Yeah.
make sure that we're not
Got the
actually
moisture.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Like things like that, we're just forgetting because the machinery and the technology doesn't necessarily allow that process to actually then happen straight away. But
There's a fundamental thing in farming as well about being trapped between the soil and the sky, isn't there? That we forget history at our peril. I think that's probably and if you can be old enough and grumpy enough to read something like A.G. Street, for instance, who talks about farming in the Great Depression between the world wars, Every generation, every society has its challenges, but often the seeds of what you're looking for, although the technology is different now, the principle, we still need to press a seed against soil with moisture and ample nutrients in a seed bed which is suitable to grow on. That's it.
Hmm.
And how we do it's a different matter. You've done
Very
really well
much.
not to mention punch planting yet, by the way.
Yeah, no, but like in all honesty, I'm going to chuckle for the conversation that was had with Kit and Ray yesterday, for where the hectare would actually then go into the future and how you could actually then do it completely with drones. And we chuckled at the idea of the hover hectare, where you
Yeah.
would literally then just do everything from air and have avian style planting with beaks.
Foot free hectare.
Yeah, no, exactly. These are all things that would actually allow you to then hopefully have important aspects of no tramways, no traffic lines, and other things like that to actually then go over. But it's all important that the knowledge that has actually then been learned is actually then not lost. I'm, in a sense, worried that lots of these farm management systems are quoting AI and the decisions that are made about all of that. At the moment, I don't necessarily believe I could actually trust some of the decisions that are actually made from the farm management systems and the AI system that is actually apparently running a big enough algorithm to actually make the best decision for us to actually then go over. And I still necessarily think the human in the loop is actually the most important aspect of making decisions of what's actually then going on.
So Warren Buffett Jr., so he's the son of Warren Buffett, the investor, has a book called 40 Chances. And his fundamental concept is that most farmers have got 40 goes at planting a crop and harvesting it, or, whatever their farming season is. And, as we get older, our hair gets grey and we have less opportunities to do certain things. Yet our experience and our knowledge and our ability to walk out in the morning and smell the air and go, should we plant today? Is it going to rain? I worry with AI. AI is fantastic for lots of things like data crunching and so on and so forth. But abdicating responsibility, handing it over to a cloud-based third party with no kind of legal responsibility, it worries me as a little Englander who quite likes planting his own fields when he fancies doing it, rightly or wrongly, I hasten to add. And I think there is a thing in AI around it's all going to be all right because of AI.
But what if we actually then start going down that process? We then take a generation away from learning what we have from our
Correct.
forefathers, and then we have to then start again. So,
There's a great post on LinkedIn which I'm going to bore you with briefly, where a recruiter talks about the elite skills of graduates now, which include writing notes and prioritizing lists, because so many graduates are using AI for their work that they're not actually following the processes in their heads. Therefore, the ability to turn up, write notes down, and work out what's the most important, the recruiter referred to as elite skills. So effectively, we are going to generate some technology which makes us stupid.
very much so. Even Plato actually then talked about it originally with the worry about the writing of the written word, which would actually stop us using our memory, which
Yes.
is a very interesting concept. And the way how our brains have all changed from using internet search engines to actually allow us to find things instead of actually using an index in a book to actually then understand
Yes.
where a reference is. We can't even then go through those processes. I am at a generation where I am lucky enough to have not had a mobile phone, still understand how to use an index, and
Hmm.
also then start using AI as a useful tool to actually do things. But I think
I think it's those bedrock of tools, which are that it's that toolbox as an analogy, which is the important thing. Because my view with AI is it's great and it's a tool, but rather like a hammer, you can build a house with a hammer, or you can go and kill somebody with it, can't you? And the use of the tool and the responsible use of the tool is the key thing.
very much so. And that's where I would like to be to actually then show innovation, technology, and how it's used as a tool within farming. And that's
At which point, this is a brilliant point where we can have a timely commercial break, and we can do an advert for the Institution of Agricultural Engineers Conference, which will be online on Wednesday, the 27th and 2nd of October, and it will be on the subject of artificial intelligence. How on earth did we get to that as an advert after that? But I think we've led into that one very well. I just thought of it while we were talking, so we're having a little commercial break there. I think I have a suspicion that we could probably talk about this for several days, to be honest, John. So with your blessing, I think let's have an and finally of what advice would you offer to anyone heading into ag engineering as a career, or thinking about it, or at any stage in their career? Just give us your quick elevator advice piece.
It's a really exciting area to actually be involved with, because no 2 days are going to be the same, because the weather and the environment are always different to actually then have. So if you want variety in life, which is the spice, ag engineering allows you to actually then get the physical mathematics of what is the world into realistic action, and allow you to do something for the benefit of what is required by us all to eat. So having some really exciting aspect of actually then getting to go to a daily job that allows you to use your brain to the full capacity, think out of the box and do some really exciting things. Agricultural engineering is probably more rewarding than many other industries that you could go into.
And we're not biased.
Oh, I'm completely biased on what I do, because I absolutely love who
We like a bit of passion. We like a bit of passion. Jonathan Gill, Farm Innovation Specialist at the UK Agri-Tech Centre, and so much more. I hasten to add, agricultural engineer extraordinaire, recent IAGRI member, working towards your chartered engineering status, and I encourage you in that wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really, genuinely, hand on heart, I've enjoyed this immensely, and I do, I feel we could carry this conversation on. But thanks again. It's been great. Thank you, John.
Thank you indeed.
For more information, visit www.iagri.org. You have been listening to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.